are you?
I'm Harry Vanderspiegel. I'm a doctor. You don't have anything to worry about. I'm not an alien.
All right, look, that's one creepy son of a bitch, right?
It's okay for people to be a little bit different sometimes.
This is some bullshit.
Well, hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. We are Dark Horse Comics here, ready to bring you a special stream on a Tuesday this week, not just a Wednesday. We'll be back tomorrow, too. Don't worry. But thank you for joining us. I am Kara. I work at Dark Horse, and I am joined tonight by two very special guests. Number one, they're in no particular order. I don't know why I said that. But first up from Ninkasi, I want to introduce Jamie Floyd. Hey, Jamie. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
You are in Eugene, correct?
Correct.
The far lands. So I'm based in Portland, and where Dark Horse is roughly, and Ninkasi, of course, is based in Eugene, Oregon. So thank you for joining us tonight. And number two, I don't know why I give you numbers, but Jim.
I'll be number two. I'm happy to be the second banana.
It's
we make a bunch.
We're all equal here. I mean, it's fine. But thank you, Jim, for joining us. Jim is the co-writer on these comics. Jim, and you have some connections with Dark Horse, actually. Is that correct?
It is correct. You're well informed. I was an editor at Dark Horse. I worked in PR and marketing for a while, and then the editorial department. I think six and a half total years at Dark Horse. Which eventually led to the connection here, where I got to write a comic about beer, which was pretty dope. That's good networking, I think.
Yeah, right. Now you get to be on the other side of the comics making process, which is pretty sweet. Do you two mind just briefly maybe giving people a little bit of info on how this came together? How did the two of you end up being co-writers on this comic?
Well, I guess maybe I'll step in at first and just say that I had wanted to make a comic book, really my whole adult life, I guess, starting in college or whatnot. And but I ended up being a brewer later on and many other things, and been a comic book nerd forever. And basically through a relationship with Matt Parkinson, who is also a wonderful person of Dark Horse, and fellow college friend who drank my homebrew and read comic books with, we've sort of always looked for ways to collaborate together. And this is the final result of that, which has been pretty amazing.
Small world.
Small
That's
world
really
indeed.
fun. We have Dark Horse has done a number of collaborations with local businesses. And I think it's a really cool way to kind of bring things together. And we love comics. We love beer. Who doesn't, right? So it was a natural fit. Thank you again, both, for being here. For everybody who's tuning in tonight, just a reminder, we always do a giveaway as part of our streams here. And so tonight's giveaway, we will be awarding 3 prizes. They will be announced near the end of the stream, so stick around. All you need to do to enter the giveaway to win a copy of The Legend of Ninkasi, The Rise of Craft, signed by these two co-writers, Jim and Jamie. All you need to do to enter that giveaway is enter the keyword in chat once and only once, and your entry will be counted. The keyword is Tricera Hops, and you have to spell that in order to enter to win. TRICERAHOPS, Tricera Hops. Why? Because that is one of the characters and beers that we're going to talk about today. So that giveaway is open now. We'll announce it in the chat in a moment, and you can enter all throughout the stream. We'll draw some winners near the end. Stick around to see if it's you. Meanwhile, you can also ask questions if you have questions of these folks about the comic, about the making of the comic, about the beers that we're going to discuss today, about any of that stuff. Feel free to drop those in the chat too, and our moderators will be sending those through so we can address them as we go along. One thing we wanted to do, which we thought would be kind of fun, is to introduce you all to the comic by giving you a little live reading of the beginning of the comics. So Gary, my fabulous stream co-host in all of these. P.S. Big shout out to Gary. Thank you as always for helping us with these. Gary, if you don't mind bringing up the digital pages so that folks at home can follow along, we are going to proceed with a little narration for you all to get you excited about reading this comic.
We're diving right in.
We're gonna leave you on a cliffhanger, right? This is gonna introduce you to the comic and make you need to finish it.
We got the prep beforehand where the Legend of Korra voice actors did this, and I was like, oh, no pressure. Like, I'm sure we'll be great, just as good as professional voice actors. We'll nail it.
Right? We all have to have something to aspire to. We'll get there. This is our practice. So, as I said, we are here to celebrate this comic, The Legend of Ninkasi, The Rise of Craft, co-written by these two with amazing art by Eduardo Francisco. He wasn't able to join us for the stream tonight, unfortunately, but we are going to showcase a lot of his amazing process art as well as finished art here. And I also have some messages from him, which I will relay as we go along. But for now, let us dive in to this comic. So we begin. An unnatural fog hangs over the city of Eugenia. Noises of mirth that rose from its taverns are dampened. Music that filled its streets is muted. Where vitality once thrived, silence and fear has taken hold. Those brave enough to pass rumors blame dark forces and evil spirits. The foolhardy hold a single party accountable in their whispers.
And stay out!
Few are so brazen.
Take that homebrew away. There are laws and we follow them at the Three Frogs. We serve Bloodweizen's ale and nothing else.
Kind sir, my beer is malty and rich. The hops sing and the taste is smooth. Slam. Bah! Be that way, you tasteless lout. 5 taverns and no sales. Should be easy to sell good brew when the only competition is so weak. No wonder this town is quiet as a crypt. Cheers to the next city, one that will benefit more from my wares than this eerie burg. Creak. Is that you, barkeep? Have you come to your senses and decided to buy some of my ambrosial ale? Help me! Shrip, 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 shrip. That's murder sounds. It is done. My liege, the interloper has been silenced. Your golden brew is all that flows through the taps of Eugenia once more. Delightful, delightful. Roar!
I sense it too, Trice. Something is amiss. I must consult the scrying ton. The swirling malts of time show me medieval Eugenia, a downtrodden people, and some corruption of their ale. Come, Trice, there's work to be done.
What will happen next? You're going to have to get the comic and find out. If you haven't gotten it yet, you can get a free copy, actually. Not a signed one, so it's not as cool as our giveaway, but you can get a free copy through Ninkasi. Just go to ninkasi.com, and we'll drop some links in the chat for you, too. But yeah, you can get your own copy of this comic and see what is going to happen next and meet all the rest of the characters. Again, to enter our giveaway, just enter Tricera Hops in the chat, and we'll give away 3 signed copies near the end of the stream. And without further ado, I want to let these guys talk more about working on this comic and kind of bringing this to life and working with Eduardo. Again, Eduardo Francisco, the amazing artist. Thank you so much, Eduardo, for your amazing work and for giving us all of these little tidbits, which I'm going to share with folks as we get into it. But so Jamie, do you mind first telling folks just a little bit more about Ninkasi?
Yeah, you bet. So Nikos Ridge, my business partner, and I started Ninkasi back in 2006. I'd been brewing for 10 years or so here in Eugene before that, and finally met the right people and started Ninkasi. Ironically enough, it was at a time when IPA was not popular. You can imagine a time in beer world if you like beers, but it was kind of a big risk for us to come out with our leading brand Total Domination IPA, and we started there. We're going to be celebrating our 15th anniversary next year, which is really exciting, and hopefully, based on our ability with COVID type scenarios, be able to start doing some collaborations with friends and some other fun to sort of remember the years as they've gone by. And then also we're here in Eugene, Oregon. Sorry, real quick, and we did open up the Better Living Room, which was our first sort of restaurant experience, and have subsequently shut it down recently. We were doing to-go food, but for the winter, we're actually just going to winter down and come back next spring, and hopefully be able to provide a wonderful service experience that way. And we're still filling corn cans and selling beer and doing dock sales, including the beers we're going to talk about tonight.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you for including that. It's been really tough, of course, for everyone during COVID. And yeah, those doing online orders and all those things. I know it's a little tougher though when you make alcohol to ship those sometimes. But
we did get,
yes.
we got best COVID dinner boxes in Eugene for our sort of weekly polls, as well as the second place for new restaurants. So pretty good for only being open for 6 weeks for in-house and doing stuff. So we're excited to come back when we can.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And 13 years. Wow, that is congratulations.
15.
Big 1-5. I'm gonna write that down because we should celebrate that. 15. Dark Horse also has an anniversary coming up pretty soon. 35. So I also, as I said, I have some responses from Eduardo, which I'm going to kind of work in here as we go along. If we can kind of show off some of his artwork as we go. Do you two mind talking about your process, working together and also with Eduardo on this comic?
Well, this comic for me was really cool. And one of the things that was so great about it is it felt like this like spiritual connection of a bunch of things, like, which was random, like I did not expect, right? And I'll do a little storytelling and then I'll quit blabbing. But prior to my time working at Dark Horse Comics, I worked at for those who know, was like the only nerd source of news for a long amount of time. I worked there towards the tail end, and like shortly before the magazine like shuttered, I was reading, I think it was Tim Truman's run on Conan. And I think it was like Conan the Cimmerian, and it had like, which is like, and I think that arc had the Richard Corbin in it, and Richard Corbin, which is tragic, super talented guy. But that, like, I fell in love with Conan reading that arc. Like I had read it a little bit before, but reading that, like I really fell in love with it. And I think it was like the indie book of the month thing on it. And so I corresponded with Philip Simone, the editor, and like that eventually was like an in that like was one of my ins to try and get a job at Dark Horse and like move out to Oregon. So that was like cool, because when we started working on this comic, one of the things I when it synced together, when Jamie and I were trading notes, like, you want to do like Conan, right? Like, am I off that we want to do kind of a Conan thing? And then when it was like, yeah, I was like, okay, we're good to go. I know exactly what I want to do. Like, let's take all these ideas, putting them together. But then the other crazy thing is when I moved out here in 2009, Ninkasi was one of the first, like I was always trying to try new beer because I love beer when I lived elsewhere. And I was like, okay, I'm going to get the local flavor. And I think that was back, like it was only like maybe Tricera Hops, Total Domination were like big bottle beers at the time back in 2009. But there was like, that's a few from that initial phase of moving out here. So it's one of those things where it's like, Jim, do you want to write a comic about beer that's also swords and sorcery? So it's kind of Conan-like, and it's got this like connection to this brewery that was one of your first Oregon breweries that you got into. And I was like, this is a nice little job here. Let's do it. This is fun.
From Eduardo on this very subject, he says, I was very excited when I received the concepts from Jamie Floyd's characters. Adding to those amazing early concepts was the addition of Jim Gibbons' amazing script. Jim and I had worked together previously on Two Past Midnight and Captain Midnight in 2013. So getting to team back up was another wonderful experience. I still remember the line of introduction in the script where Jim said, to put you in the right frame of mind, I envisioned the vibe of the story as Roy Thomas / Barry Windsor Smith or Kurt Busiek, Carrie Nord, Conan comic meets Game of Thrones, but with more beer. And he was into that. So Well done.
I mean, like wear your influences on your sleeve and just run with it.
Just go with it. I mean, if you're going to be doing something Conan or Sword and Sorcery, period, I think you need to go big or go home, probably.
I know for me, it was pretty amazing looking through all the works because looking through Eduardo's works was his ability to draw monsters, aka dinosaurs, and also his abilities to do gods and goddesses or superheroes. It was perfect. It was like everything. And to Jim's point, we started talking about it, and the Conan sort of key fell into place where I was like, exactly, that whole sort of mentality that is how we're going to approach these comics. And yeah, it's been, the world provides for us nerds. Apparently, it's cool.
I was gonna say that now that we've read back through it, that opening narration is like a total Kurt Busiek homage right there. Like that's 100% those books. And I remember putting it down. I was like, I think this might almost be plagiarism, but we'll go with it.
I mean, he hasn't said anything, so I think you're good.
Now we got to watch out. No, I mean, it was just it was one of those things where I could envision that little opening bit. And I think even in the lettering, it's a very similar style of kind of the script scroll caption boxes and all that. And when I saw it, I was like, oh, that's perfect. That's exactly clearly the letterer when they read it was like, oh, this guy's doing some Conan homages. Let's do it. So, but no, it was super fun. And that was the crazy thing too. I think I found out right as I started writing that Eduardo was going to draw it. And I think I was his first editor at Dark Horse. And so it was another full circle thing where I was like, this comic is crazy. It's just making me very nostalgic about a bunch of great things. So, but he killed it. He did an amazing job. He's super talented guy.
Oh, absolutely. We're looking at his art as we talk tonight. And I hope everybody at home is appreciating this. You can see this art too on some of your beer labels, right, Jamie?
That make sure I'm not muted. Sorry. I'm always on that. But yeah, so one of the amazing parts of this is working with Eduardo and with Dark Horse. We realized that it would be amazing to continue that collaboration on. We have our own in-house art team. So we have a group of marketing team that works together to create our visual presence and other pieces of us as far as that goes. And so uploading we realized that we could partner and continue it on. And it's been incredible for Denise, who sort of does our primary art side on this side, who's a huge manga and comic book fan as a whole as well. Getting to work with Eduardo is incredible. And he sends all this stuff through, and then she can kind of channelize it into our sphere. And it's fun to watch the artistic process continue to go. And the first beer in all this, which correlates really with this comic book, is Tricera Hops, of course. And right here is sort of a gilded can. I know that there's probably a better way to show that than what I've got here, but I wanted to be prepared. And that, Tricera Hops is one of our original beers, and I've been making double IPAs for a long time. It's kind of your classic Northwest IPA, and for me, I think is sort of an elder Wiseman of brewing at this point. Regardless of whether I want to acknowledge that or not, I get told a lot that from brewers and home brewers and people who started breweries that Tricera Hops was a beer that inspired them to be a better brewer. And I have my own beers that way. So it's pretty incredible to have that. But the artwork that was done for that's wonderful. A lot of people don't know until the comic book that Tricera Hops is winged and is sort of a crossbreed of many mythological beasts, if you will. And so it's fun to bring that to life in the can there. And then we have a lot of work going on right now with the beer Megalodon, which is a beer that we first actually brewed in relation to our 10th year anniversary. And we brought back when we realized that the Meg needed to come back and be a part of future stories as well. And so what's awesome about Megalodon is we've been able to, this is a 10% alcohol beer. The double IPA is 8% alcohol and very smooth, sort of resiny, a little bit of citrus, floral action going on there. Lots of centennials in that beer. With Megalodon, it's 10%, and it's sort of like a bludgeoning device. It's pretty good that way. Actually, Trice's too, but it's very smooth. It actually, for being an IPA, it has a lot of hop flavor, but it's just incredibly smooth for 10% beer. And I'm not trying to overplug the alcohol piece of this, but
No, I'll confirm for you. Like that'll sneak up on you. I got some of that when I saw it on the shelf sometime not too long ago, and I grabbed it and I was drinking it. And I'm like, this is 10%. This is too smooth to be 10%. And then 2 beers later, you're like, oh no, it is.
But for people that follow our beers, if you've ever wanted to drink Tricera Hops as like a mellow beer, then have a Meg first, and then it just seems like a session IPA after that. And then the third beer that we've released is Velociroptor, and Velociropters are also sort of a world apart from our past. We were sort of doing, I've loved dinosaurs, and it even made a beer called Hoposaurus Rex at another brewery before that. So dinosaurs have always been huge. So we sort of filled out our dinosaur character line. And then as the comic books came to life, we realized that we could create new characters for future works. And so Meg and Velociropters are central parts of the Ninkasi comic universe and universe as a whole that is starting to unfold itself right now. So it's a lot of fun. Velociroptor is great. This is more straightforward in some ways, Northwest IPA, in that it's 6.6% alcohol and 50 IBUs, but it has both Brew One and Lotus hops, which are very new hops to the world. Not that many people have them, and they're super tasty. Create sort of the citrus is much more on the creamsicle side, and there's melon tones, not just tropical. There's a lot going on in the beer, so it's super delicious. And what's really fun is to give visual reference for beers that have so much flavor on the inside. It's a totally awesome and impactful.
I think it's really fun that you got to take, kind of the characters you had for these beers and explore them more and kind of tell a story in these comics. That's really cool. I did ask Eduardo if he had a chance to try any of them yet. And he said that unfortunately, because he is based in Sao Paulo, Brazil, that between COVID and the distance, he has not yet tried them. So maybe we can rectify that at some point. But thank you again, Eduardo, for sharing all this cool art and for chatting with us today and providing some of your insights too as we go through this. He did want to thank you all and share how much he really enjoyed working on this project too. Everybody from our editor on it at Dark Horse, Megan Walker, as well as Jim and Jamie here, and our licensing team, Meg and Carrie Yadro, both essential parts of this process. I'm sure you guys have been working with all of them during this project too.
Yeah, I'll just intercede real quick and just say how amazingly professional and awesome it is to work with Dark Horse. It's definitely led us to the place where we're at, where we're doing art for in relation to some of our products and other stuff like that. It's an incredible group of people. Like for me, I'm a nerd and I've wanted to do this, and to get to be on the inside of all of it was just so alternately awesome. But to also have people that know to take me with kid hands through the whole experience, it was really also very nice. So good work.
It was such a fun project too, because like Jamie came in with like ideas like crazy. Like it was just a giant stockpile of like stuff to work with, which like as a beer fan, like you kind of see like different labels and different names for beers and stuff like that. And you're like, I wonder if that's just like a clever name or if there's more thought that goes into it. And it was very cool to like get all this additional information and then just start going like, well, what if we did this? What if we did this? And then we're kicking ideas back and forth. And like from like a kind of like a behind the scenes perspective on something like this. And I don't know if, like I presume we're talking to some comics folks and some beer folks. So like for maybe the beer folks that don't know, like a lot of times what'll happen is like the idea comes up and then it kind of like the creative team comes into it. That's where me and Eduardo come in, and we kind of take a lot of like raw material and then we kind of put the craft to it to try and put it together, because that's where our experience lies. And the great thing about a process like that, when you're working with like the stuff Jamie was throwing out there, is like you're not having to like start scraping the bottom of the barrel for like new ideas. Like there were a lot of ideas on the table, and then you can start like working it together. And what was brilliant about this, and this is like the story I love to tell about this, because I also work in marketing, and so you're doing like client relations a lot of times, and like no time in my life, probably ever, have I written something, regardless of how good it was, and had it just go through. And there's like everyone's like, it's perfect, in comics, in marketing, all of this, like it's typically like, well, but this, or well, but that. And I remember getting an email, I think on like my first or second draft of the script. And it was like, here's Jamie's notes. And I looked at it. It's like this big ass Word document, like maybe like pages long. And I had this moment. I was like, all right, well, the project was really cool up till now. And like, it's still fun, but like, this might be, like this is going to be rough. And like, I think I like walked away and then came back and opened the document and all this. And it was just like, like page by page compliments primarily. Like there were a few little notes worked in, but it was like, oh, I noticed this reference you put in here. Oh, this great. Oh, this was very cool. Like this. And I was like, oh my gosh, like I need to like, anytime I'm having a bad day, I need to whip out this words, like this notes document and be like, oh, here was like, cause I was like, my whole thing I was like, oh, this is a beer comment. I'm going to make a reference here. I'm going to put in like a Ninkasi beer reference here. I'm going to put in a joke about beer here and all this. And like, and you kind of go like, when you write that stuff, you're like, well, maybe someone will notice it. You know what I mean? And I would like, that's my challenge to anyone listening right now. Like if you can go through and like compile a list of all the beer references, because I think there's like one at least every other page or something like that. And if you're a beer person, you can probably spot them all. But it was great because it was like the bottom line was like, you want to have like your client in a sense, like be someone who you're writing for and they appreciate like sort of like the work you're putting in and the little things you're doing. And man, like to this day, I've never had somebody just go like page by page and really go like, I saw that. I saw what you're doing. I liked it. Keep doing it. It was a lot of fun.
Thanks for sharing that and throwing fire on my type A ability to really go in there. So I'll take that as a compliment. Thanks for sharing. I
mean, if you're gonna
I was afraid to send it to you because it's like, I don't know. I've never done it before. What am I supposed to do? I'm like, all right, well, I'm just going to go through frame by frame and give him all the love he needs. And you know what I'm saying? But just, well, more because we just started working together and like, we obviously like kind of just like bonded. And to your point, like it all worked out. Like you have some of the same interests as I do as far as that goes. And so in the comic world and like nerdiness as far as and so you took so many subtleties that I would never have remembered to put in the book because I'm in the forest from the trees, dude. And you just nailed it. So yeah, to that point, there is a sieve ability. You can just take and shake out all of the fun and the puns and the deep references that are there.
Yeah, well, and I think that's the thing, it's like if you're going to be type A, like compliments are a great way to go with it. Like I highly recommend. No, but it was like a lot of times people, you work on comics, like people are busy, right? Like the notes are like, fix these 5 things or fix these 10 things. And that's like all you get. And so when it was like a long list, I'm like, oh my God, there's going to be a lot to fix. And then I'm like, I start reading through it. I'm like, oh, this is all really nice stuff. This is fantastic. So it was good. It was good. But it was cool too, because it was also like one of the things like collaboratively, like when I had like, I think one of the things I threw at you guys early on was I was like, I think Ninkasi needs a weapon. And I was like, I looked up this like footage of, or I don't know, some photograph from a museum of a Sumerian grain scythe, I think it was.
Oh yeah, it was so...
And I was like, oh, she's like the Sumerian goddess of fermentation. Like, what if we could give her like kind of a signature weapon, like based on that? And I sent it and then like, Eduardo then took like this like reference image from a museum and made it look cool and all that. But it was one of those things where I was like, I don't know how much you guys kind of have like in your mind of what this is going to look like or not. And I remember throwing that out being like, well, this will be a litmus test. And when it was like, awesome, let's go. Love it. Keep going. I was like, okay, cool. Well, I'm going to pull no punches now. And you tell me when I go too far. And I feel like you guys just let me keep going anytime I came up with an idea. And then you guys would come up with ideas and we just stack them on top of each other. But hopefully all that bleeds is in the comic. Like when people read it, hopefully, and everyone loves it. But it was a blast.
Well, maybe the type A moments, then someone will look at that and say, what weapon is that actually supposed to be? It's not a fire. That's not a sickle straight up. What is, that's what, at that point, then, you finally.
Yeah. When you get those comics fans asking for the specifics, when we do the eventual, scale model of that, we better get it right. We better be accurate. This is Rex, my cat. He invades every stream. Hi, Rex. No, stay over there. So do you guys have any particular favorites? I mean, you mentioned there's a lot of Easter eggs in here. Do you have any like little favorite things or even like a favorite character about these comics? Favorite line of dialogue?
Do you want to go first, Jim, or me?
I will say this. I won't like, for folks who haven't read it, like
Yeah.
There was a line of dialogue I put in, and it's sort of the big climax, like when the villain sort of gets his reckoning. And I put the line in and I was like, I think this might be too corny. Like, I think it might be too violent and too corny and all that. And I was like, let's just, I was like, well, like Jamie's been really responsive to everything so far. Like, we'll at least have a conversation about it. And that was the one where I was like, I think I might get like reined back in on that. And it was not. So that's my personal favorite. I think it's like the second to last page or something for people when they read through, but a little bit corny, but also like, I think in the spirit of like the Conan comics, the genre. But that's my personal favorite.
I like that. I like that teaser there too.
Yeah. I mean, I agree that is kind of like some of the really good stuff. And this won't spoil anything because it's Sumerian and stuff. So Ninkasi is a Sumerian goddess of fermentation, if you don't know. So there is actual mythology to this, though. We, much like Alan Moore and Promethea, we are taking all the liberties we need to make this an actual character instead of what came off a clay tablet, 1,000 years ago. But I've had multiple people say, by Inky's 8 wounds, and just like text me that and be like, that's amazing. I can't believe that's in there somewhere. So like, it's not just even on the beer level. There's a lot of deepness to that. And I was a sociologist and a bunch of stuff before other nerdiness. So that part, not to give away. And there's so many great visual elements where both what Jim is saying or communicating and what Eduardo is doing is ridiculous, including what Jim just said. But there's multiple moments where it's the 2-punch. You get what might be just enough cheese to ask the question, and then something responsive enough visually to say, nope, that's exactly what I needed there. So
that's funny. I actually like going back again, like, I have a degree in classical humanities. So I studied like a lot of ancient Roman and Greek like literature. And that was one of the things at first when I was like reading the Ninkasi beer bottle, like way back when, I was like, oh, cool. Sumerian goddess of, I was like, this is interesting. Okay, let's try this, But yeah, it was great. Like, I don't know a lot about the Sumerian ancient history. And so doing this, you got to delve into it a little bit, which is very cool. And sorry, I had the page, I think it's 6. Where Ninkasi is kind of like looking over Eugenia for the first time. It's like a shout out to Eduardo. Like every time you write something, you do your best to try and put it onto the page. So like the artist is going to like perfectly, you describe to a level where you want to give them creative freedom, but you also want to put in the script like what you kind of want to see. But that was, Eduardo killed it on every page of this thing. But page 6 was like this weird moment where I was like, oh my God, it feels like he pulled that right out of my brain. I don't think that's a quality of my writing per se. I think that's a quality of his artistry. And that was just like that to me too. It's like, it's a simple page. It's a quiet page. It's not like some of the bigger moments, but that one I was like, oh, cool. That looks exactly how I pictured it. And he nailed it. So that was another cool one.
And I'll carry on with that too and say that I completely agree, especially with page 5 right before it, which has a lot of personal stuff for me involved, which I'm not going to go into detail, but may involve tattoos on my body. But otherwise, that 6th page, it does transition into that scene, including like parts of it, which are parts of my original thoughts, like, 10 years ago when I first thought about all of this stuff. Even those images were in my mind for how to accomplish that. And I was afraid how that was going to look, right? And then it all comes together between how you wrote it and how it was portrayed. And it just swoops right into the next part of the story, just the way that I thought. And so much more badass than I had originally thought it.
Absolutely. Yeah. When I asked Eduardo this same question, basically, what was one of his favorite things to illustrate? He obviously is in sync with all of you, and he answered mythology. He loved the concept. He was really interested in the history behind beer. And he says, Jamie, please correct me if I am mistaken, but some say beer is the first alcoholic drink in the world. Historically, and he talks about his interest in Sumerians, Egyptians, and Mesopotamians. The ancients believed that the drink was a divine creation, more precisely from Ninkasi, the goddess of beer. And so he did a lot of research, obviously. He studied some archaeology, a fairly long answer, which I won't read all in depth here, but he did. He really got into the mythology and enjoyed illustrating that. And he just thought that was really cool. So his passion shows. I think he did an amazing job illustrating this. I asked him also if he always, like if it's his normal process to color his own line art. Because as our comics fans know, often we'll have a penciler, we'll have an inker, we'll have a colorist, we'll have a letterer. We have, different people who work on each part of this. Not always, though. So he said that it depends on his deadlines. Usually when he has the opportunity to color, he counts on his assistant, Stephanie Renee. And they kind of help him with the color process while Eduardo focuses more on layouts, revisions, line art, and then he comes back and finishes the final pieces. So I always think that's interesting to kind of learn more about how the artists themselves work. Most of them can do a variety of things and work in a variety of ways. I asked him a bit about his tools too, because that's another question we often get from fans, whether they work digitally or traditionally. And he said today, to speed up and facilitate the delivery of his work, he produces everything digitally with a Wacom digital tablet and Photoshop. But when he has the time, he likes to use traditional pencil, brush, ink, and watercolors. And having seen his work now, I'm like, whatever you do, man, it's going to look amazing.
Yeah, he does some watercolor stuff that he shares on his Instagram that's gorgeous. It's like crazy. And it's, yeah, obviously that's the thing. Like he can do it both ways, and that's amazing.
Yeah. Oh, this is so good. I mean, honestly, folks, if you have not gotten this comic, hit up Ninkasi's website, get yourself a free copy or try to win one tonight, because it's so cool. Like, even just seeing the preview images we had at Rose City Comic-Con last year, I was pretty excited for this. I hadn't even read the comic yet. So it's a lot of fun. I also, I guess, small world, because I also went to University of Oregon, which you're at, and studied the same things, anthropology and classical history. And yeah, I mean, maybe that's part of it. Maybe that's why I enjoyed it so much, but it's really cool. And if you like the Conan and the sword and sorcery, you'll like it too. And if you like beer.
I think that's a cool thing about it is like, I think as a concept, as like, because not everyone's read comics before. And I always feel like sometimes if you didn't grow up reading comics, you sometimes are like, well, how does this work? Like, do I go from left to the right, like everything else, there's sort of like an unspoken vocabulary to like how story flows in comics that when you've read them for years and years is like a second nature. But the one thing, and I'll pat all of us on the back a little bit with this one. Like, I think we did a good job, like putting together something that like knowing, like longtime comic fans would hopefully read it, but also that like people who maybe have never read a comic before would pick it up. Like, I think it's like the story beats are there. It's pretty accessible. The way like Eduardo has like done the visual pacing of the pages, like I think it seems very clear what's next, which is, it's one of those things. Like there's the other side where people are like pushing the boundaries of what can be done with comics so much. They understand the mechanism so much. And then there's kind of doing it in sort of a very traditional way to make it, as accessible to newcomers as possible. And like, I think if people are picking out like references to random Sumerian goddesses in it, they must be like hanging on to the storytelling isn't throwing them off. So I think if it's going to be your first comic, pretty good one to start with.
Honestly, I mean, we have a lot of other similar comics projects going on at Dark Horse right now that, I mean, I'm pretty excited about, that I think would appeal to people that have maybe been following us here too. If you're into Critical Role, for example, I would say that this comic is also right up your alley, with all the cool mythology and just similar gorgeous kind of fantasy art. If you're a fan of that, or D&D, we have the Stranger Things and Dungeons and Dragons comics right now, that whole genre. I, as a fantasy fan, am super excited to see all that cool stuff kind of taken off, and just being able to do more of it and work on more of it lately. So what else? We do have a question from the chat, actually. Jamie, this one's kind of for you. Folks are interested to know whether these cans that you were showing off earlier, if they will be collector's items in the future.
Well, I mean, that's certainly an awesome idea. I mean, at a certain point, beer should be consumed, but I do think that the like comics and everything else. I mean, when I'm sending gifts right now to folks, I and some that are autographed and some that aren't, so that they can actually read it as per pure geek code and all that stuff. So I do think that I can see that kind of stuff. I mean, it is kind of funny to get asked to autograph random things in general, but I think a beer can is super appropriate, obviously. But just in general, just the collection and the lines of things, as this continues to build out, which I hope that it does, I think that there will be a lot of it. And the cans themselves will be something that's collectible, which, you know, compared to some of the video content, we're doing these really random cheesy videos that are super fun. Continue to layer in future ideas for stories in the comic universe or just the general universe that Ninkasi is living in. And it's a lot of fun, but these are real things, you know, those are actual things. And to the point that a lot of our world is becoming super digital, I think that a lot of people will collect those things. I certainly have my official Ninkasi Brothers dolls that were released when the movies first came out, and I collected those dolls, and they should be more prominently displayed than they are. But, you know, like there is that level of collectionism that I think is pretty cool too.
Now you can display your...
And it's not selfish. It's drink one, save one. I mean, that's, for me, beer is an experience, so you should at least experience it. But I do believe in the value of the geek culture and collecting. So.
Yeah. And we did some Hellboy beers recently too, and
gigantic.
Yeah, cool label art, cool prints to display alongside the bottles. One more question for both of you, I'm going to say. Do you drink your beer while making the comic, or do you wait until you're done and then have a drink?
I know. There's like an old saying. I can't remember where this is from, and I'm probably, you know, wherever it is, but it's like write drunk, edit sober. That doesn't apply to me. Like what I've learned is I don't write very well. So I think I did Tricera Hops. And I think I bought it and kept it in the fridge until the script was complete. And then when the script was complete, I was like, all right, it's done. I'm toast. You know what I mean? I did it opposite. I was like, I'll edit drunk this time, but I kept that was my sort of flag or whatever, my reward. I put it in the fridge and I was like, all right, as soon as I'm done. And I think we had like a pretty quick turnaround on this. So I think it was like maybe like a week, 2 weeks or something like that. We wrote it pretty quick. So it was one of those things where I think it's like the contract was signed. I was like, let's go. I'm going to buy the beer. I'm going to put it in the fridge. We're going to go from there. So, but that beer tasted sweet. Let me tell you, when you work hard and then you reward yourself with the beer, it tastes extra good. I don't know. Like, I don't think there's any science to that. Jamie, you correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think there's science to that, but I think beer as a reward somehow tastes better. I don't know why, but it does.
Yeah, I mean, I think beer, like I just had mentioned, beer is really tied to your experiences, and you can build those up in any ways. And probably non-surprisingly, I did the opposite. But I did think about this comic book over a decade ago, so it's been like a long run for me. And I will say that I didn't drink beer before I got the tattoo of Ninkasi with Tricera on the back of Tricera Hops on my back years before we made this and stuff like that. But to that point, there was a lot of creative inspiration, and more importantly, like when I was like in college, like I was always a comic book geek as a kid, but in college, like early 90s, when all the shit went down, and all that stuff, like I was a beer geek. I was home brewing. There was like a little bit of craft beer out there in the world. You had your Deschutes and your Widmers and your Red Hooks of the world back then, but not all of the varied other stuff. But we would like drink beer and read comic books. And I think that's like an important part of not just Northwest culture, but especially if you live in the Northwest, it's like, well, the weather's crappy, so I'm going to grab a book or four and maybe a beer or two, and I'm going to hang out and do this. And I know that that's been a helpful inspiration, but of course the comic book has its roots in beer. So there's that. But I'd like to think that between my Dungeons and Dragons days and all of the comic books I've read and just being a general sort of mythology geek, it's really all swirled together in some fermented form that comes out into these comic books one way or another. And I'm glad that beer is a part of it for sure. It would suck. It would totally suck if we did all this and none of us actually drank. Well, we understand that Kara can't drink beer, but like used to drink beer and stuff like that.
Yes. Yeah. alas, I can't now. It doesn't mean I didn't enjoy it when I could. And today
Cheers.
I drink the cider and things like that, which is another booming craft industry, which makes me a very happy person. We were talking a little bit earlier about cider and hard seltzers and things like that that are alternatives for folks like me who can't have the wheat, unfortunately. So
I think I was having this thought before we got on the line because one of the things I think is really cool in fantasy writing and movies and everything else is I love the idea of magic as sort of like akin to craft. Like you're not just like born with innate ability. You know what I mean? I think it's much more relatable, or at least a little bit more relatable to me. And I think interesting when there's an idea to like, wizards have to study, or they have to work out. They have to do something to get those skills. And I like that idea of craft behind the idea of fantasy, not just sort of this like innate ability. And it's cool. I think we got to marry some of that idea together in this, where it's like, it's not just about innate magic. Like there's work that goes into it. And I think beer is kind of like a cool thing to tie together with that. So I don't know. It was fun. Just an idea. It was a random thought.
I love that. There's a lot of cool tie-in threads to this comic that, man, again, read it, see, enter our giveaway. We'll draw some winners in a little bit here. And even if you don't win the giveaway, again, you can contact Ninkasi and get yourself a copy pretty easily. What else? Our next question. So fully acknowledging that 2020 has been a very strange year for all of us, and we are all obviously working from home. For those of you who are tuning into Dark Horse for the first time on this stream, we have been streaming, as I said earlier, every Wednesday to try and bring some more of this fun content to everyone at home while we are all ourselves working from home. And I know we can't be at conventions in person, unfortunately, this year. And we were mentioning Rose City Comic Con earlier. That was where we all got together last, I think, in person to kind of show this comic off. Those were the days, but we're trying to bring you some virtual content like this. So thanks again to these guys for joining us to do this. But so with that perspective on 2020, do you have any other upcoming virtual events or other things that you wanted to mention, kind of let people know about tonight?
Well, I guess for me, what I would say is that starting in January, we're going to start to we're doing a bunch of videos in relation to the 19 ounce cans that we showed earlier on. And I can tell you that there will be some spectacular examples of me being random and thoughtful in the same time with outstanding costumes. I actually have a friend here in Eugene who is making me costumes for the stuff that we're doing. And so for me, I'm still trying to find ways to be creative in the person that I normally am, even during pandemic, I think like a lot of us are. And so it's been really fun. We always sort of do little video vignettes by having an in-house videographer and photographer. And so we work together and do a lot of fun stuff. But coming up relatively soon here in the new year, we're going to start promoting with a lot of stuff. And again, all of that stuff leads to future portents in relation to the comic book as well as Ninkasi universe.
I also asked Eduardo that same question. He's got some projects coming up that have not yet been announced, so we can't quite tell you about them yet in true comics fashion. But he says that he is taking art commissions right now for those of you who might be interested. You can find him on Instagram at Eduardo Francisco, and we will drop that link in the chat. It's fairly easy to find, I think. I like when people have straightforward usernames on socials. It definitely helps. So yeah, we'll drop that in the chat in a moment. Also, in the frame of 2020, as we're all staying home, are there any other comics, books, movies, TV? Like what have you guys been enjoying lately that you would recommend to others who are looking to pass the time during quarantine?
Do you want to go first, Jim?
Oh, you know what? And I'll use it. I'll use it as an opportunity to plug as well. I'll combine the two questions. But no, I worked on, and you can get it. I think, my website is thejimgibbons.com and you can find links there, but I did a kids comic that's like heavily influenced by my own like summer camp experience. And it's kind of like cryptids and aliens. Like the pitch is, it's called Camp Bitter Lake, and it's the summer camp outside of Area 51. And so it's all sorts of goofy stuff, but it's a kid's comic. And this was the year that we were supposed to be getting out, pressing the flesh on it and all that. And obviously 2020 was what it was. But hey, if your kids aren't reading comics on an iPad or some tablet by now, this is the year to get them hooked on it. And you can get Camp Bitter Lake on my website. And I think it's a pretty good read. I gave it to my nephew, and he said it was very good. So I presume all, like grade school kids will agree. But that's a good one. But other than that, I actually, it's funny because we were talking about magic as craft and fantasy and beer in the Pacific Northwest and all that. And I'm actually I'm finishing up, and it's my first time reading through it. And I don't know how I missed it earlier on, but Ursula K. Le Guin, who's a Portland, she has since passed, but she was a Portland native. Her Earthsea, which I think is like a young adult series, but it's awesome. I'm like the 35-year-old, like fanboy of it these days, like checking it out from the library, doing all that. But like, it's a solid 6 books. You can get into it if you're stuck at home. Go with that. You can get your fantasy, get your Portland. Great follow up to Ninkasi: The Rise of Craft, I think. So,
I will wholeheartedly second that. I love that series, and any Ursula Le Guin. How about you?
When I was thinking about this, I was thinking, for me, one of the things that you all started doing, which makes me happy, was the Norse mythology, because I didn't say it in this, but Thor was my first comic book hero. When I was like a little wee lad, that's all I cared about was Thor and his hammer and all the things. So like that's pretty rad, and glad that that's continuing on. And sort of on the comic book geek level, I've been, because of all this process, been talking a lot about Neil Gaiman and stuff in general. And so actually yesterday bought like the whole Book of Magic compendium, giant arcane piece of blah, 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 which you guys did not do. But anyway, like
that's fine.
It was kind of fun. I just recently, and I just want to put this out there to people who love comic books, just if you have a lot of time on your hands, because it's a big read and it's not a comic book, but Jerusalem by Alan Moore, who is not making comic books anymore. It is literally a life changer it's very long. It's 3 different books and 11 chapters total and some 2,000 pages of awesome Alan Moore-ness. And, but if you want to dig in for the winter, that's like, I actually like downloaded that on audio tapes and occasionally plug into that to like get back into it, because it's like it's Alan Moore, so it's like super deep. Right. And then, fortunately for me, I'm just gonna plug my wife real quick. Leela's super amazing, and just recently she got into The Mandalorian. So like as a piece of that, I got to watch the first season for the 3rd time and all this stuff. But it's awoken a lot of the Star Wars-ness in me. And I did want to give a big plug for some of the original, in case it doesn't come up, of my connection to Dark Horse, because it was like all the way back to Sin City, and like I knew Michael Allred, not like as like a homie, but like when I wanted to be a comic book writer a little bit, and brewing was not an option back then when I was like a young lad. The fact that he had done Madman and then eventually Came With You was like a big piece of like, that's actually real. Like this stuff actually happens. You don't just read them and stuff like that. So I'm always a big fan of that. And then the Dark Empire series that Dark Horse did, that's like some of my favorite of all time. Luke goes to the dark side, big spoiler there. But if you haven't read it, you should read it because it's awesome.
I think it's fair for you to spoil like a comic that's over 20 years old. I think at this point, a little spoiler.
Well, and if you've ever wanted him to, anyway, that's all I'm going to say. If you ever wanted to go there, because it definitely got pulled from later too. You can't not acknowledge the fact that they didn't look at that and say, well, there's a little bit of something in there that we're going to take for the future.
We've been hearing things like that a lot lately, actually. I know a lot of us, a lot of my coworkers at Dark Horse, we've all been enjoying The Mandalorian too, for sure. Try not to like spoil episodes for one another at this point while we try to catch up. Yeah, that's an awesome shout out too for Norse mythology. I'm really excited about that one too. Long time Neil Gaiman fan. So we just had issue number 3 come out. And we'll be doing that one similar to how we did American Gods. So you'll get like 3 arcs, and then each one of those 3 arcs will be collected in a separate graphic novel. So you'll get 3 volumes by the time we're all said and done. But
can I give you guys like the shameless like former Dark Horse employee fanboy plug, which you guys opened the show with? But Resident Alien, that was when I was working at Dark Horse. That was like the book I was most jealous was not my book. I love that book. Like it would come out and it's a great read. Like I hope the show is great as well, but like the comics are incredible. They're these like nice little mysteries, and they've got like a supernatural, or they've got the alien element to it. They've got the murder mystery element to it. They're just really, really quality comics. It's beautiful artwork, but it's also like there's like a workmanship to them, which I really always appreciate, where it's not like they're not trying to do anything too fancy. They're just like, we're just gonna tell a great story. Really intriguing, great looking art. They're awesome. Highly recommended. Like there's something I think there it is. You guys got the graphic. I think everyone should read it. I think it's a great book, a really, really great book. And that's one of those things. Like I just, shameless fanboy of that book. It's awesome.
Oh, thank you for the extra plug. Yeah, a lot. I think that series has been kind of under the radar for a long time, but it's been going on for a long time. And it shouldn't
be. It's so good. I mean, that's why I have to say it. Like it's one of those things where it's like, I mean, not every book is going to have 1 million readers, but like this one should. It's really good.
It's really good. And I do hope, the fact that it's becoming a show, which will be debuting in January on Sci-Fi, the fact that it's becoming a show has definitely already helped boost it a bit. We just had what you're looking at now is the cover of the new omnibus edition. I think we might have sold out of that, but don't worry, more is on the way. More is being moved around so that folks can get it. But that's really nice to see. And that omnibus collects the beginning of the series because, as we were saying, it's been going on for a little while now. But we also have a new series ongoing right now because, as Dark Horse tends to do, they're like mini series, right, that are collected in graphic novels once again. So we have a new series that's ongoing right now for Resident Alien called Your Rides Here. And this might be the last one. We'll see. But Peter Hogan, the writer, has been really involved in the sci-fi series too. So for longtime fans of the comic, I know it does look a little different. They've definitely changed some things about the adaptation for live TV, but he really likes it. Peter Hogan is he's very involved with it. So I think that bodes well for folks who are fans of the comic too. So yeah, that's coming up on Sci-Fi in January. Thank you for shouting that out, Jim.
I was gonna say, like, as all Portlanders know, right? You sell a lot of books to Powell's, but like, I still got my Resident Alien on hand, and nice. Jamie, I still got my old ass copy of Dark Empire on hand.
Thank you.
That was my first Dark Horse comic years and years and years ago. That was my first. So too sentimental. I couldn't give it up.
I know a lot of people found Dark Horse through those Star Wars comics and Aliens, which.
Now the real thing is, like, my second Dark Horse comic was probably the Mask comic that came in the CD liner of the movie soundtrack. So it's probably a lot of people's first Dark Horse comic, but it was my second. Dark Empire was my first. So.
That's good product placement. We should try to do more things like that.
I don't know if you guys have seen The Mask. It's a pretty good flick.
Might have heard it. Jim Carrey, yeah. We did have another Mask series actually come out just last year, which was really good too. Christopher Cantwell, who also is the writer on *Halt and Catch Fire*, which is one of my favorite shows. Another one that kind of like flew under the radar a little bit, I think. But now he's written a lot of comics, which is cool to see him break in like that. The Mask. I pledge allegiance to The Mask. Really great series. But yeah, that kind of brings us to the end of our Ninkasi comic deep dive here. Thank you again to Jim and to Jamie for joining us. Jim Gibbons and Jamie Floyd from Ninkasi, co-writers of Ninkasi, the Legend. Oh God, Legend of Ninkasi, Rise of Craft. It's a long title. Sometimes, I lose track. We're going to draw some winners in our giveaway here. We have 3 signed copies, signed both by Jim and Jamie. So our winners are, congratulations to Magneto. Ninja Magneto. I think I'm saying that right. Favorite customer and not a machine. Clearly not a machine. You have each won. We're announcing those in the chat right now. All you need to do to claim your win is you can use the claim command, but also send Dark Horse a whisper here on Twitch, private message, and we will get in touch with you and arrange your prize shipping. Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in tonight. And thank you again, Jim and Jamie. Did you have anything else you want to let fans know about this comic or anything else that you are just dying to get out there about this?
Just to say that Jim and I have already worked actually pretty well, much like the last time. We've done little antenna vibing and we're already there. It's kind of amazing. I will say that meeting Jim, even though through all this time and distance and pandemic, we can't hang out. It's awesome to meet someone where we have so many awesome ideas. But we've worked a lot on a comic book too already that will introduce Megalodon and Velociroptors into the comic book reality versus just the general Ninkasi universe. And that's been just an absolute joy. And the only spoiler I'll give is that Megalodon is, she's underneath the ocean and she protects Atlantis. And that's all I'll say.
Thank you. Because I didn't want to ask about that if you weren't ready to talk about it yet, but thank you. Thank you for doing that. Oh, I have some more cool recommendations from Eduardo before we sign off here. Along the lines of other things, if you need more viewing material during the pandemic, he also recommends Mike Mignola's Hellboy.
Yep.
I heard of that. Count Crowley, which I'm so glad to get a shout out for that, actually. That one is by David Dasmalchian with amazing art by Lucas Kettner and colors by Lauren Affey. It's just fantastic. It's so fun if you love the pulpy horror monster hunter tropes, but David has just given it so much heart, and there's a lot more to that story, kind of like we're talking about with the Ninkasi comic. A lot more than meets the eye. It truly is a great character and a great story. So like the rest of you, yeah, we hope we can do some more in the future, but it's now collected in a graphic novel. So that's super cool that Eduardo has been reading that and enjoying that. Thank you for that shout out. He says, great art, perfect for those monster lovers out there. And we can't forget Invisible Kingdom, which is another great shout out. G. Willow Wilson wrote that with Christian Ward on the art, another phenomenal artist. It's won the Eisner and is nominated for several more awards this year. So that's super cool on Burger Books right now. You can find more information about all of those at darkhorse.com. And just a reminder, even if you, alas, did not win one of the signed copies of the Ninkasi comic in this giveaway, you can get a free copy from Ninkasi. Just head to their website. We'll drop those links in the chat. They're also on our website as part of this whole stream announcement. So darkhorse.com for that. Thank you again. Big thank you to Jamie and to Jim for joining us tonight.
Yeah, this was great. Thanks for, any opportunity to drink beer and talk comics is pretty good. Can't complain. So thank you guys.
Right?
Yeah. Best Tuesday ever.
Cheers. Cheers from my mug.
Who are you?
I'm Harry Vanderspiegel. I'm a doctor. You don't have anything to worry about. I'm not an alien.
All right, look, that's one creepy some bitch, right?
It's okay for people to be a little bit different sometimes.
This is some bullshit.